Toby Fox. It's hard to say anything that hasn't already been said about him. He's a fantastic game developer and composer who is responsible for the famous duology of Undertale and Deltarune, subversive, turn-based RPGs that utilize themes of choice as storytelling devices, each in their own way, as well as odd but lovable humor. They incorporate a clever mix of humor and dread, being very funny, but also giving the player the feeling that something darker is lurking beneath. They often subvert the player's expectations, and it's clear that's because Toby Fox himself has played a lot of video games, so he understands the mind of players and what they've grown to expect. He knows how to take his own games and add shocking twists, using not only story but also incorporating gameplay. But before all of that, he created something else. Something that took a lighthearted game and turned it into a psychological analysis of a broken man who lost not only the love of his wife, but the life of his only child. This is the story of Earthbound is a turn-based RPG developed by Halcyon, now known as HAL Laboratories, and Ape Inc., and was published by Nintendo, releasing in America in 1995. The game originally didn't sell very well, but eventually gained more traction online until the game went from being known as some childish RPG to being known as a must-play masterpiece because of its unique modern American setting, meaningful moments, and very odd sense of humor. And just like with other popular classic games such as Super Mario World, fans eventually created tools to allow people to make their own ROM hacks of Earthbound. So, at 16 years old, an Earthbound fan called Radiation, otherwise known as Toby Fox, created his own ROM hack, released in 2008. But this wasn't just any old Earthbound ROM hack. It was a hack that delved into much darker territory, with gory imagery and more mature themes. Of course, he went on to make Undertale and Deltarune, as stated earlier, and is now just embarrassed by this hack, calling it a bad ROM hack with swears. Its biggest legacy is probably a certain song that was later used in Undertale and its role in the infamous Sans' nest theory. Well, I decided to check it out and see if it has any merit or is nothing more than a bad ROM hack with swears. So we start by creating our save file. Right off the bat, the game asks us what our fave Frank is, hot dog or that. The first thing you'll notice about the character select screen is that Ness is completely absent. Instead, we have this guy, whose default name is Varric, but I just named him Endom because Nintendom never fits in anything. It also informs us that Varric is not psychic, even though he can use spells. So is our character just magic? I was confused about this the entire game and never got an answer, but anyways, the game informs us that this takes place after the final boss Gygus' defeat in Earthbound. Then I find myself in Ness's house. But then we wake up and find that we're actually passed out drunk in the Chaos Theater in the city of Tucson. A man running for mayor in the next room explains that a girl's parents were found dead, with the girl reporting that she saw a horrible creature come in and devour her parents, its mouth covered in blood. The only clue? Footprints leading to a sewer pipe which leads to Foggy Land, meaning that the creature must have come from the city Winters. Also, the mayor is absolutely only sending us because it looks great to the city if he was the one who sent the hero to kill the monster. Right off the bat, I'm reminded this was written by a 16-year-old because we have slut-shaming, druggies, a self-proclaimed Mexican stereotype. Well, at least Toby's trying to be positive. There's a guy with OCD who says he has to stand next to a sign or he will kill someone. Okay, actually, the drugged lady kind of made me laugh, because I'm sorry, someone wanting to shank a bitch in Earthbound is really funny to me. I think this is when the hack is at its worst, at least writing-wise. Sometimes the edgy humor is funny in how insane it is, but other times it's just uncomfortable or even offensive. It's not super pervasive throughout the game, but it's one of the things the game is remembered for the most part, and I think that's unfortunate because it clashes with the serious tone the game otherwise goes for, but I'll get more into that later. I get into a battle with an enemy called a Stench Elemental and notice an option called Loser. What even is this? Oh, it's auto battle, it's making fun of me for using it. Hey, Toby, maybe I don't feel like mashing the A button 50 times per fight. The Polestar daycare is particularly sad. Okay, spoilery recap of Earthbound, but basically at the end of Earthbound, the four heroes are turned into robots because living things can't time travel, and are sent back in time in order to stop Gygus' evil plans. They battle him in the past, and after Gygus' defeat, Ness and friends are sent back home and all is well. But what if they never came home? That is the question that Earthbound Halloween Hack asks. In the daycare, the kids talk about how much they miss Paula, one of the heroes who vanished. Her father upstairs in particular mourns her, remembering all the times they shared, eating apple pie and seeing her take care of the kids at the daycare. It's well written, it feels like genuine Earthbound dialogue, and it's really heartbreaking because the father knows that her sacrifice was not in vain, but it still hurts him deeply because he'll never see her again. I head to the sewers to fight the monster, and die immediately. But then I go back and eventually find a mysterious door. I enter the door and am hit with this beautifully haunting description of the fear I feel as I trudge through the dark sewers, and I can't lie. This part where the dialogue is paced, as it says, "Oh, no, no, no," genuinely creeped me out because I had no idea what lay ahead. I reach a new area in the sewers where the music is off-putting and eerie, and the water runs blood red through the sewer. The enemies are bleeding all over, and they use attacks like trying to crush your bones with their teeth and ripping your eyes out. Some might argue it's trying too hard to be scary, but I can't lie. It freaked me out. To be fair though, anything can be made scary with the Gygus theme added onto it. I eventually die, again, and make my way through the bloody sewer once again before reaching the door to Winters, where once again the description is absolutely beautiful and emphasizes how warped Winters currently is, even though the land of doom was a little cheesy. But I can forgive that minor blunder because of how beautiful and eerie Winters is in this game. The area uses this really cool palette for the plants and the trees that makes the autumn theme clear while also looking surreal and off-putting, as if I'm walking through a hellish wasteland that was once a beautiful winter wonderland, where the ground is too dark but the trees are too bright. But I eventually make it to a tent where I can heal as well as save my game at a tombstone. I then battle a disturbing melting star man that I've only put in the video because I think it looks awesome. I decide to take a break, and guess what? My game didn't save. So I make my way all the way back to where I was, and I actually save my game this time. There were also desperate survivors who, according to the walkthrough, will give me healing items if killed, but I don't want to hurt them, so I ran away. This is where that Toby Fox magic starts to show, that feeling of empathy for who the game shows as an enemy, that grapple between making an easier choice with violence or the harder choice of showing peace. These themes that became so prominent in Undertale and Deltarune originate here. Speaking of which, I enter a laboratory and encounter Dr. Andonuts, a scientist from Earthbound who helped send the kids to the past, including his son, Jeff. I speak to him and he is not doing very well, stuttering his speech and fearing that I am there to kill him. He mentions the completion of his prototype, a machine that, quote, generates a metaphysical realm in the mind of the user. He then states that he is filled with guilt and rage before mysteriously vanishing. I try walking upstairs, but it must be the endless stairs from Mario 64 because I just end up back down. I can't exit the building without just warping back in. I go to his mysterious machine and the game describes the monster living within it. The game reminds me that I have a choice, and yet only offers me one. Kill him. I had heard about this part online before, but I still debate what I should do. After a few moments, I press B. The game chastises me for refusing to kill him, saying I made the wrong choice, that I'm supposed to kill the monster, and by opening the door to the machine, time and space would collapse, and I would enter his Magicant, his mindscape. The narration pleads for me to just wake up, that it was all just a bad dream, a line which is all too familiar to me as someone who sucks at bullet hell. This is probably the most interesting idea in the entire game and the aspect that reminds me the most of Toby's modern games. It subverts the player's expectations by forcing them to engage with the game in an unexpected way by making their own choice when the game appears to only have one. It also discusses the idea of the hero killing a monster, making the player think about the morality of battling and killing monsters. The idea of making a choice to spare a monster would become the main theme in both Undertale and Deltarune, in which the player is able to spare enemies rather than be forced to kill or defeat them. The section here even shows that when he was young, Toby wanted to subvert typical game design and storytelling in a way that has since surprised so many players. I'm warped to Dr. Andonuts' Magicant, where Apple Kid explains to me where I am and that I need to find Dr. Andonuts' courage that has been stowed away by his fear if I want to find him at the Sea of Eve, in which he hides from his own mind, so I can escape Magicant. I find the name Sea of Eve interesting because it seems like this was meant to be a reference to the biblical allusions from Earthbound, like the Devil's Machine and the Apple of Enlightenment. I wonder if maybe the name is because he feels he sinned by sending the heroes back to the past. I buy some items, visit the hotel, and talk to some NPCs. I find a clock that asks Adventure Time, which I assumed couldn't be a reference to the show Adventure Time since it hadn't come out until 2010, but the show was being worked on in 2008, and the pilot had come out by that point, so it is possible that this was indeed an Adventure Time reference, assuming Toby was aware of Cartoon News at the time. So I walk around and stumble upon 3 cute, smiling flowers. And they just talk to me about flower stuff and then I leave. I find a gravestone with my name on it? I don't really understand what this means. Was I dead the whole game? Or perhaps this represents one of my many deaths in this game. If they added new gravestones for every time I died in this game, the game would crash from loading them all. I try asking the flying men about the courage, but unfortunately they don't join my party in this game, which would have been very helpful. Instead, they say they'll stick to making tacos, and guess who's back? The Mexican stereotype. Whoopee. I tried this looping path here and find Ness sitting down, who says nonsense and laughs like a maniac. Well, I guess Ness couldn't have the biggest role in this game, since based on the title screen demo, it seems like Ness's standing and walking sprites were completely replaced with Varric sprites. I then go into the center building and enter the first door from the right, not knowing what lay beyond. I arrive in the southern part of a very familiar city. The music starts up like normal, all until devolving into a somber, almost broken sounding version of On It. Using a slower, distorted version of a theme to create fear or dread. Yeah, this is the same tactic used in Undertale and Deltarune, and it seems like it originated here. I am unable to enter any doors, and some of the palettes look glitchy, which I think is intentional for the most part, but still worth noting. Very few of the NPCs are friendly, with seemingly normal ones standing still yet attacking upon contact. These enemies are called Remember Me, with each being a strange muscular mass with a soft childlike smile and being easy to defeat, while the somber but hopeful song Buzz Buzz's Prophecy plays in the background during their battle. I'm not sure what they're meant to represent exactly, perhaps the 4 heroes? Or maybe various people from On It, or maybe people from throughout Dr. Andonuts' life, or perhaps it connects to the boss, which we'll talk about shortly. I find Ness's mom and she mistakes me for her son before freaking out and asking who I am. While Toby Fox's obsession with the caps lock to be spooky is a tad melodramatic, the thought of Ness's mom never getting to see her son again is really sad, especially because she was always supportive of Ness, and in Earthbound, Ness has to call his mom to prevent homesickness. I approach the fallen meteorite from the introduction of Earthbound, and a woman begins to swarm around me like Buzz did in the original. She asks questions that seem to be not directed to me, but rather towards Dr. Andonuts. Lately, you've been acting kind of disinterested in me. Is there something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Honey, is there something you're not telling me? Honey, please, you're not hiding something from me, are you? The game immediately jumps to a boss named No, and at first I'm confused. It is a trio of muscular body parts being a bicep, chest, and a set of thighs respectively. At first I'm confused, what does this have to do with anything? But then I remember a post I saw and now cannot find about this game. I remember the questions that Dr. Andonuts' wife was asking him, followed by the name being No, and it all clicks together. Dr. Andernuts is indeed hiding something from his wife, likely because he doesn't want to break her heart. He has indeed become disinterested in her, and it's not out of malice. He doesn't want to hurt her. Rather, he realized he's gay. I managed to die and kill No at the same time, which causes me to apparently get 4,294,940,287 EXP. And yet I don't level up after all that, so I'm very curious to see what happens because I definitely just broke the game. The game begins to fade into a different location. It seems like it's properly sending me to the next cutscene, and I broke it. I'm brought to the game over screen. Dang it, I was hoping I could go with a bunch of XP. When I press continue, I'm back and on it, but the meteorite is gone, which I don't think is supposed to happen, so I reset the game proper, and after a few attempts, I beat the boss. I am warped to a strange grayscale place where I find Dr. Andernuts next to a gravestone. I examine the gravestone, and Dr. Andernuts begins to speak to himself, saying, "She left so suddenly. We were all in shock. You know why, don't you? Everyone can see it on your face. Your guilty face. There was no Zexo night. I'll never lie again." I admit I'm not sure what this means. I assume it's referring to his wife, but I suppose it could also refer to Paula, saying how she left so suddenly because he sent her back in time. He pleads for courage, and the courage states that it has come to help me fight the demons in Dr. Andernuts' mind, but I need to find 2 more courages first. I return to Magicant, in which I realize courage takes the form of Paula, who has joined my party. This time I enter the second door and arrive in a small cave. I quickly pass through and am warped to the inside of a grayscale house with somber music playing. I find Dr. Andernuts' wife, who is lamenting about how he never spends time with her or Jeff anymore, asking him if he knows what it's doing to their child. She asks what would he do if she went away, not knowing if he could raise Jeff on his own. She asks desperately if he loves her or Jeff. Dr. Andernuts just says, of course he does. The storyline really hits me hard. The idea of discovering he's gay when he already has a wife and child. He's already established his family. What is he supposed to do? If he lies, it hurts his wife, who doesn't understand why he's become so cold and distant. If he tells her the truth, it hurts her when she finds out he isn't in love with her anymore. Plus, they have a child together. No matter what he does, it's going to hurt somebody. So he just stays isolated from everyone, lost in his scientific work, afraid of telling anybody, yet knowing she's hurting anyway. I appreciate this story because despite being told by an edgy 16-year-old Toby Fox, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be homophobic or make a joke out of it. It's a genuine story of being caught between one's life and their sexuality and being afraid of telling someone out of fear of loved ones becoming angry or heartbroken. I battle monsters as I walk through various rooms in the house. I run across, this guy. Anyways, Paula faints, but I proceed regardless. I reach a room where Dr. Andernuts' wife stands. She states that she's leaving and taking Jeff with her because Andernuts hasn't been there for them. I reach a room with the instant vitalizing machine. I revive Paula and then talk to Dr. Andernuts. He says how because he can't live with himself, nobody else will live. Then everyone will understand and cherish him and that he's immortal. Glad to see he's doing well. I leave the room and then encounter a neon-colored room with Jeff standing center. Jeff tells his dad that he needs to go south because he had a vision that told him he needs to find Paula, but then asks, "I'll see you in another 10 years. What's that supposed to mean? Am I supposed to say goodbye like this? In that case, goodbye." It seems like this is in reply to Dr. Andernuts, suggesting that he is about to isolate from his son again. I then battle Darkheart, which the game states is your own fault, which I wonder if that is referring to Varric or Dr. Andernuts. We get an absolute banger of a track to fight the boss, and of course I eventually defeat it. I'm warped to a room with Dr. Andernuts. He says how he was so happy that Jeff came to him for help, and that he knew he wasn't going to be able to raise him alone, and that he wouldn't want Jeff to turn into a shameful monster like himself, so he was sent away to boarding school. Andernuts feels like if he helps Jeff, maybe he won't be a monster anymore, and he won't need to hide himself anymore. All he has to do is finish the phase distorter, but he's afraid of failing. The screen fades, and this Courage is sad about how his father is doing mentally and asks how he made a time machine despite not understanding time travel. This Courage is, of course, Jeff. I then arrive back at Magicant, where Jeff has joined my party. I prepare for the next journey and arrive back inside the building. Before, a bear blocked the final door, but he stands to the side now, so I enter the third and final door. I arrive at a museum called the Museum of Dead People. The museum sign says that only here can I see the people murdered by him. Sure enough, I see the lost heroes, his wife, as well as one of the robot suits the heroes were in when they were sent back in time. I do wonder why the wife was here, unless maybe the place she went to after she left is where she died or was killed, or maybe it's more of a metaphor. Dr. Andernuts then offers to take me behind the scenes and I enter a factory. The enemies here are really tough. I get absolutely annihilated by enemies like the Vadula and the Uberhaunt. I find this conveyor belt with the heroes and Dr. Andernuts' wife, with the Mr. Saturns here saying that Andernuts committed premeditated murder and has all of their blood on his hands. There's also a guy talking about his sexy muscles, so a bit of a weird mood whiplash. But the factory here, while a bit heavy-handed in terms of how it delivers the story, is still really sad. Dr. Andernuts genuinely feels like their deaths were entirely his fault, even though they had to go back in time for the sake of saving the whole world from Gygus' reign. I find the telephone save point and the instant revitalizing machine. I take advantage of this and grind a ton, but didn't bother recording myself beating up like 100 guys for EXP. Okay, I should probably bring this up at some point. You could probably guess based on how many times I mentioned dying, but this game's difficulty is absolutely brutal. This is probably the most infamous part of this game, besides maybe a part we'll get to later. Many enemies have one-hit kill moves. You could argue it forces players to utilize unique strategies to defeat enemies, but the small amount of psychic points combined with the low HP on each character throughout the entire game makes it very frustrating. Compare this to Earthbound, where during the hardest sections of the game, in which there are many one-hit kills, the player has time to heal the heroes before they faint, because they have large amounts of HP that count down over time. I then arrive at the place the heroes were sent to before they were sent back in time. Here I find the Face Distorter. Dr. Andernuts remembers how happy he was when he finished the Face Distorter, because he felt he would finally prove his worth to the world and his family. But he was also scared, because nobody had ever attempted time travel before, and was terrified when he realized he had to surgically turn the heroes into robots. He realized why he was so afraid, because that machine was a death trap. I fight the Face Destroyer, which I honestly think looks more silly than scary. I suppose the large eyeball on the right is creepy, but the gaping jaw and cracked out eyes, I mean, I could see someone finding it scary, but its design combined with its name make it hard to take seriously. Only one problem: I should take it seriously because it destroys my whole team. I return and just barely manage to defeat it with a psychic shield, bouncing back its lightning attack onto itself, thus tearing it to pieces. After defeating it, I once again encounter Dr. Andernuts and start wondering how many times have I said Dr. Andernuts in this video. But anyway, he recounts the moment which he realized that Gygus was dead, yet the kids hadn't come back, realizing he didn't have enough Xenonite to create another time machine, and he had failed his whole life. During his grief, he had created an army of monsters and set them loose, likely being the monsters fought at the beginning of the game. He longs for courage, so courage speaks to me, stating that after Gygus' defeat, the future split into multiple timelines, one in which Gygus was always defeated, and one in which his defeat was new, due to Gygus being able to invade every timeline. But when the heroes' souls return to their bodies, they return to the newly created future, not the original. The heroes never died, they just never returned to the original timeline, thus being why Dr. Andernuts is in grief. He then joins my team in the form of Pooh, one of the 4 heroes from Earthbound, and we return to Magicant. I wasn't paying attention to a specific piece of dialogue from earlier in the game, so I have to consult Toby's walkthrough, in which only now do I find out the easy way of taking out Uberhaunts, as well as other strategies that would have made things much easier. I'm apparently supposed to walk to the middle of this loop here, and I find a strange, root-like tentacle in the ground. I am warped to a broken place. Not only is the Cave of the Past music playing here, but literally the palettes appear glitched and broken, although I imagine that was at least somewhat intentional to fit Dr. Andernuts' broken mind. I meet monsters like a little slime creature, a robot with a cap similar to the NES robot, and a creature called the Geek League, clearly a reference to the original American name for Gygus from Earthbound Beginnings. The world around me begins to resemble the Cave of the Past more, and my fellow party members are suddenly in their robot suits. I eventually find a save point and end up in a strange, swamp-like area. Of course, because 16-year-old Toby was a sadist, I die immediately from an unavoidable enemy called the Amalgamate. It looks pretty silly, even having a little text below it that says, "I'm old," for some reason. But of course, I have to point out that the idea of amalgamations would later become an important part of the story in Undertale. I have multiple points where I reload my save file and enemies immediately spawn next to me, which is stupid, but I eventually make my way through the swamp, avoiding multiple amalgamations but needing to battle one. I win and find Dr. Anonuts' wife in the center. She talks to me about dinner leftovers, or I guess talks to Dr. Anonuts about dinner leftovers, and I am warped to a nice autumn field, which I'm not sure if it's supposed to be in the real world or in the Magicant world. But in any case, one man cheers me on, saying I can beat the monster, while others warn me, saying I can use the sparkling area in the center of town to escape. Interestingly, it doesn't work at all, which I wonder if that's a bug? I don't think it's a bug. I think the idea is that I truly have no choice, despite the game seemingly presenting me with one. I buy some items, and with no other choice, I enter a dark clearing in the forest. I'm apparently inside the monster. I seem to be in the strange, veiny place where you encounter Gygus in Earthbound, but I am suddenly controlling the party members from Earthbound Beginnings instead, which admittedly doesn't make a whole lot of sense considering it doesn't seem like Dr. Anonuts would know who these people are, but it's a cool reference, so I digress. To be fair, it also doesn't make sense how he would know what the Cave of the Past looks like when I think about it. I reach the strange area at the top, the same place where you meet Gygus in Earthbound, but instead I meet a strange face? I'm sorry, but it looks too dumb for me to take it seriously. It looks like a joke character, not a genuine threat. But apparently the face belongs to Dr. Anonuts. He questions if I'm really a hero since I kill monsters for money, and I have come to kill him. He talks about how I'm going to kill him because the hero has to kill the monster. He's afraid to die. He just wants to be left alone. But I'm thrust into battle. The music is unnerving. The monster in front of me is genuinely terrifying. It's an almost demonic being, a bloody mess of detached, bloodshot eyes that looks as if it has just torn people apart, which based on the story told to me at the beginning, it probably has. It's simply known as the ID. I quickly defeat it, but then find myself in front of what appears to be Gygus. Dr. Andonut says that all that remains in his mind is hatred for me. I am once again thrust into battle, this time with a monstrous-looking Dr. Andonuts. He talks about this bloody universe and his unlimited power. But then he snaps. I have had it with your You little f***ers are going to have your bodies ripped in half. I'll shove your so far down your throats that when you crap, you'll sing Beethoven. TLDR. Eat I can't say that. The most insane monologue in any video game. One that completely destroys the tone of the game that it's been building up so far. This hack has a genuinely powerful story about a man losing his mind that gets undercut by this insane rant written by an edgy teenager, topped off with a pretty harmful word, one that I believe is one of the biggest reasons Toby looks back on this hack in shame. But it's so over the top, it is kind of fun. But this is followed by the most hype moment in the entire game. If you've been listening to the music, you already hear it. That's right, it's time for Megalovania. The song originated here, until going on to be used for the webcomic Homestuck, and remixed by another fan for the Earthbound fan game Mother Cognitive Dissonance, before of course going on to be Sans' battle theme in Undertale. And yup, even the one made by a 16-year-old, it slaps. And it's gonna be hard, but let's take this guy down. This fight is crazy. I set up both physical barriers and psychic shields for the whole party. He's so powerful that I decide to fight fire with fire and use Mirror to make Pooh become Dr. Andonuts. However, his flame attack takes out Jeff and Pooh in one hit. Eventually, I save Pooh with Cleanse, but I lose Paula. But Pooh, in the form of Dr. Andonuts, attacks his own self and manages to diamondize him, thus automatically winning the battle. I appear back at the laboratory. Dr. Andonuts is lying dead in his machine. It seems like I had no choice but to kill him, but the game reiterates that I did have a choice, that I could have stopped at any time. I then walk back, killing any monster in my path, with a smile according to the game narration, until the SWAT team finds me and takes me back to Tucson just in time for Halloween. There's a stupid joke about how a ghost pooed on me, and then it cuts to the credits, where the only person listed is Radiation, otherwise known as Toby Fox. who stated he had so much fun making the hack and hopes I enjoyed it. And I end by accidentally glitching the game to have the menu appear. Awesome. But that wasn't the end for me. I still had one more thing I needed to do. I start a new save file, travel all the way to the lab in Winters, and this time, I kill the monster. The game tells me I made the right choice. I stab the monster over and over as it cries and screams. The narration starts laughing, or perhaps it's Varric laughing? Eventually it bleeds out, dead on the floor. The game says that my legs are gone, my arms are gone, and my mind is gone. It then says the end, followed by more laughter. And that was the Earthbound Halloween hack. Definitely a mixed experience, to be sure. It's incredibly difficult and frustrating, although its short length does balance that out a bit. Plus, I could see somebody enjoying being forced to find unique strategies to make their way through the game. I think the low HP and PP combined with many enemies having one-hit kill moves makes the game a lot more difficult than it needs to be, to the point where I had to spend hours grinding in order to level up. It felt like Earthbound, but if it had the difficulty curve of Earthbound Beginnings, a game that I love for its world and characters, but was very frustrating in its difficulty. Also, the writing at times could be very immature and sometimes even offensive, which really clashed with the serious and mature tone throughout the majority of the game. It's especially noticeable at the climax, and while again it can be hilarious in how over the top it is, I feel it does undermine what should be a powerful moment in the story. So with all of that, is this game just a bad ROM hack with swears? Honestly, I don't think so. It's a difficult, oftentimes frustrating ROM hack, yes, but I think it really is saved by its story. It has an interesting what-if premise, its character study of Dr. Andonuts and his sexuality, the idea of whether or not the player has a choice, and subverting the idea that the hero must kill the monsters. It's clear that Toby has a lot of respect for Earthbound and understands what makes it so special while adding his own unique twist. But I think the coolest thing about this game is seeing those ideas that Toby would carry with him to Undertale and Deltarune. Those games heavily deal with the idea of choice, whether that's giving the player the freedom to make choices or dealing with the lack of choice. Dr. Andonuts' self-hatred reminds me of Alphys. They're both scientists who've made mistakes that have hurt other people. LGBTQIA+ themes would go on to appear in those games as well. The idea of sparing monsters rather than defeating them became a core feature and theme for those games. The mix of humor and an oppressive atmosphere, having great music, having complex lore for players to theorize about, and sudden, shocking pieces of dialogue. All of these aspects of Undertale and Deltarune I love so much started with the Earthbound Halloween hack. It took a few more years for Toby Fox to work out the kinks and create something truly amazing, but I think Earthbound Halloween hack deserves to be remembered as something more than just a bad ROM hack with swears. It's an okay ROM hack with swears, but one with incredible ideas that would go on to be a large part of two incredible and beloved pieces of art. Also, in case you're wondering, I said his name 40 times.